Hey everyone, welcome to Morehouse Metrology Matters, inside look at people, culture, friends, and metrology professionals. Today I have one of my good friends, business coach, also business coach for the last 6 years, which Chad, we might discuss any of that because this conversation is going to go wherever it goes. So I have Chad Harvey, really, I would say an expert in AI currently. AI moves so fast that maybe tomorrow he won't be an expert. But, we'll see, Chad, if that holds up. So, Chad, yeah, for anybody, for the two people that are listening, do you want to tell? Do you want to say something about yourself?
Oh boy, Henry. I'm not real great at introducing myself. I'm a little bit of a Swiss Army knife, as you mentioned. I am very active as an executive coach. I do a lot of strategy work for companies. For the last several years, I've founded a platform and also a podcast of the same name, AI for the C-Suite. And I must be a little bit of a masochist because, as one of my guests on the podcast recently said to me, she said, I really enjoy being at the bottom of a steep learning curve. And I thought, damn, that really resonates. So that's where I am all the time. I try to bring a sense of curiosity to everything I do. And I enjoy especially being at the intersection of technology and humanity, because that's, I think, where all of us are right now.
Yeah, and for our two listeners, as I said, we don't know how many we have. It's probably three. My parents will listen on occasion, so that bumps us to four, and maybe your parents. So now we're at six. My
Well,
God,
maybe we can give you some cross publication and get you another listener or two, Henry.
oh my, it'd be phenomenal. It would be like the economic data when people were saying the 9% Iowa population expansion of 9%. Yeah, for those that do not know, yeah, being a member of Vistage and having Chad as a coach, the reason I wanted to bring Chad on today for the majority of people is for us. Chad and I talk all the time. Is just start talking about AI and how you can use it. Chad's been out to our facility numerous times. Is the coach of not only myself but also our integrator, VP extraordinaire, and has helped us along the way as far as business development and all things. A lot of headaches as well, Chad. Right? Went through culture rebuilds. A lot of different things. And when you see, I do a presentation or did one on building a culture of quality for the lab, and I use your timeline sheet in that.
Mm.
The implementing strategy. People think that's going to happen overnight, and it's kind of funny, the rah-rah speech, right, Chad? The Thursday or something, you go attend a webinar, you hear it, and then you meet with your management team. We're going to change everything. We're going to change our culture. We're going to do everything else. Let's go print out some visions and purpose statements, and we'll post them on the wall. And we'll have a group meeting, and all of a sudden everybody's going to be engaged, and everything's going to change in our workplace. And Chad, that works how much? Is it 95 or 100% of the time?
Well, it's kind of like that line from Ron Burgundy, although the percentages are a little skewed. 95% of the time it works 1% of the time, right?
Oh,
So
the Sex Panther
that's right.
cologne.
Exactly.
60% of the time it works every time. Yeah. So for those that don't
Yeah.
know, so yeah, Sex Panther cologne is the cologne of Chad's choice, if you're wondering, and
It's very
60% of the
musky.
time it's very musky. It
Yes,
smells like
yes.
lion's pee. I think they say it. Oh, they do the whole thing on so,
Oh
and
my.
I understand that's how you got your current wife here, that you were wearing Sex Panther cologne, and she just
It,
thought you were irresistible.
It is. I would drop it behind me as I'd walk the mean streets of Harrisburg, just hoping to generate a trail of vixens. And what can I tell you, Henry? Uh,
And you got one.
I got one. That's right. Back, yeah, sure. I'll be taken out back and summarily beaten after this podcast. By the way,
Okay,
um,
so if you
I
like
would
Chad
say
and want to book him quickly before
that's
he's
right.
beaten.
That's right. Before I disappear without a trace. Oh my. You raise a good point, though, when you talk about a lot of the work that companies do and the idea factory. One of the things that I often like to tell folks is that ideas are easy and execution is hard. And it's that day in, day out grind. And I think from the work that I've done with your company, you probably understand that better than anybody because of the nature of the precision that you're dealing with and the need to get it right. And it doesn't matter whether it takes an hour or a year and a half, right? It's that precision
Yeah, of
and it's that attention to detail and it's that execution. That's what's
course.
hard.
And we all want to go faster. So
Right.
as leaders, we want to go faster. We don't want to wait. You know, I watched the movie Hope Solo. I think it was a Hope Solo, or was it Solo, the mountain climbing
Oh,
movie?
I did not see that one. I know what
Oh,
you mean
okay.
though. Yeah.
So like every day the guy hangs for like hours just in his van in
Yep.
preparation, and he just prepare,
Yeah.
practice, 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 because eventually it's free solo is what it was. Eventually you're
Right.
going to climb this ridiculous mountain. So as leaders, yeah, and you want to do it right, and you don't want to mess up. A lot of our problems are afraid to fail. We're not afraid to fail. It's just nobody wants to fail. It's a whole
Hmm.
different mentality is when you look at that side of things, right? Not afraid, though
Right.
nobody wants to fail.
And it's the
So
question
yeah.
of what kind of culture do you have, and is there a an acceptable level of failure? I'm not a super big fan of the Silicon Valley fail fast, fail often mantra. I
Hmm.
do like the idea of responsible failure and failure with the idea of improvement. And I think that's where a lot of organizations really go awry. They don't have that ethos embodied in the culture that says, okay, we're going to take responsible risks. We know that we're going to fail, and
Yeah.
we're going to give you permission to fail so long as we as an organization and you as an individual learn from that failure.
Yeah, and that's the tough one,
Yeah,
is it not? Because you still want to go fast. You want to get stuff done.
right.
You have a timeline of 6 months. It ends up going 9 months, and then you go back and, well, what happened? Well, all these little gotcha moments, and then
Yeah,
you haven't been around for some of this, but in metrology we have like a PERT formula where you can analyze things. You may have heard of it, and then you can try to get your predictive analysis and everything coming in. That is so difficult. When I was able to do like a predictive analysis, I got, I think, to like 69%, which is a funny number, but it was around there. I remember it's like 68.7 or something ridiculous, that we could predict the time it was going to take for an instrument to come in.
Hmm.
Well, okay, so that's a main. We're having an instrument come in, we're doing the calibration. So over 31% of the time we didn't know. Something thought would take 45 minutes was taking 3 hours. And
Hmm.
then that is with a lot of data gathered, a lot of other things to go into it. And you can start refining this. You could say, okay, well, now I have a number. Now I can put in buffers and everything else. So that's one aspect of the business. Then you're machining parts, then you're ordering parts, then you're dealing with vendors. So in a sense, that prediction rate was super easy to do because that's incoming equipment that we're taking the time on, and we didn't start the clock till we started to do work on it. We didn't start the
Hmm.
clock at when we got the order, which would have been someone not shipping for 2 weeks. It would have made more of a mess of all the data. So
Hmm.
it's very difficult in some aspects of what, as companies, what do you want to focus on? Do I want to focus on data? Do I want to focus on
Right.
uh, culture? Do I want to focus on a bit of both? We've taken more of the approach currently that culture is key. Back to Peter
Right.
Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast. We want to focus, if we're looking at metrics, billings, bookings, backlog, the three Bs. It's super easy to look at those, but it's still, what are you going ahead? Where are you going with all of it? And what's
Yeah.
cool now is analyzing data was such a hard thing to do and getting it all together. And where you're coming on here is for the companies out there. If you have data warehouses, right? If you have nice organized data, AI, Chad's done a lot of work with companies in which where AI can be really cool. And I'm hoping that you can talk to some of that. I mean, you showed me what the one plan where what was it, zoning, where they
Mm,
sketched
yeah.
everything out, loaded
Yep.
it into an AI agent, and then it was what talk more about it. You actually worked with the
Yeah,
company.
that was an interesting job, and I'm gonna come back to that here in a second. I want to make
Okay.
a comment about what you were talking about though, with respect to your doubling down on culture. And I think that it's really easy, especially now, for companies to drive by that idea. I was sitting with a manufacturing CEO the other day, and he was talking about how their quote experiment with remote work had failed, and everybody's got to get back to the office. And he wanted to drive right by what the culture was going to be in that organization. Then I made him stop, and we had to talk about that a little bit. And here's why that's important is, and this directly pertains to AI, is we are rapidly moving into an age where the type of work that a lot of people have done is going to change. In fact, we just analyzed a new research paper yesterday and published it on our platform. And it's I'm not going to get into the weeds on this, but basically 85% of jobs are going to have a 65% role change over the next 5 years due to AI. That's across the board. That's not just office typical, what you'd think of as white collar type work. That is manufacturing jobs. That is traditional blue collar working class jobs. And that's because AI is converging very rapidly with sensors and with robotics and a lot of other things. And we're seeing this flywheel accelerate. It's an exponential change. And so, to bring it back to where we started, culture is really important because you're not going to be replacing people. You're going to be evolving their jobs. I think the organization of the future, like a Morehouse, for example, you may be able to grow to 5 or 6 times your size with maybe only a 10% addition of headcount, right? But the jobs and the people that are part of that headcount, they're going to be doing substantially different things. And what's it come down to?
Yep.
It comes down to how well they work together as a team and the culture. So I just wanted to make that point because I
No,
think
that's
that is really important right now, and it's getting overlooked in a lot of discussions.
and that's an awesome statement because that brings us back to going to culture, flexibility versus rigidity. So if you have a
Yes,
rigid company, you're not going to be able to change fast.
right.
And the way this is coming out, like I've followed you for eons. Chad has its own AI podcast, and from the start of it, it's changed drastically. It
Yes,
keeps changing, and we're going to go through some rapid change. And the companies that are flexible are going to be able to adapt better. The companies with the better
yes,
culture. I mean, you have to have both because if you're
yes.
rigid and have a pretty decent culture, maybe the culture can break through the procedures and the
Mm,
rigidity. I mean, our for the people that we deal with, I mean, a lot of auditors,
mm,
and they come in and they do audits for us, and I get upset because you have to have everything, like everything has to be documented, procedures and everything else. But when you are so rigid, the flexibility isn't there. And then
right.
adaptability. And I know there's auditors out there that would listen to this and say, well, this is horse crap, right? If you have your systems built, whatever. But if you've been in these companies, these super quality companies, they get so rigid that what did the procedure say? What did this say? What did this say? And then people can't think on their own. So if you get a
Right.
new instrument that comes in, like all work stops. They have no idea how to think and deal with it on their own. So that's there's also a bit there's a lot wrapped up in what I'm saying, Chad. It's learning, flexibility. There's a lot of things in there, and I'm not saying do not have procedures by any means. We
Right.
have them and all that. I'm just saying have some flexibility and have the ability for your team members to have voice and input into that flexibility.
That's exactly right, Henry. And I think that's exactly where a lot of companies go very, very horribly wrong, and then they end up out of business, is they become experts at whatever X is, right? And X might be
Oh,
manufacturing, X might be delivering a particular type of service. It
yeah,
really doesn't matter what that deliverable is. What matters is that over time, through trial and error, they've figured out what the quote ultimate process is, and they rigorously adhere to that. And then when a disruption force comes along, and that disruption force could be something that directly attacks or is impacting their product or their service, or it could be an external factor, right? It could be a cultural shift, it could be a technological shift, it could be any number of things that requires a nimble mindset and an attitude in the organization. And then you don't have that culture, right? You don't have that flexibility. So instead of moving into the skid and being nimble, we just hit a wall, right? And that's it. And sometimes it's a slow burn, and we watch the implosion over years. And sometimes it happens all of a sudden, right?
yep. Yeah,
So
it's an interesting topic.
yeah,
for anybody. And you're still doing just a little bit about what you're doing. You're still doing daily emails. A lot of them are about
Mm.
AI, though
Hmm.
there's still a lot about culture, and that's free for if somebody's listening and saying, you know, what, how do I learn more or whatever.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. Yeah.
ChadHarvey.com. You can
Yep.
is the daily emails. You do 5 a week.
Yep.
Sometimes
We,
they're long, sometimes they're short, sometimes they're great. Other times you might be too busy. Let's just be honest. You might just
yeah.
be too busy, and it might not catch your eye, and say, I don't want to read this today, and then you
Yeah.
might miss a great article, which
Yeah.
sucks. But that's all of us. We all have limited amount of time, right?
That's exactly right, and that's why Monday through Thursday I purposely keep it short. It's usually no more than 3 to 4 sentences with a link out to a resource and some thoughts. And then Friday, as you mentioned, we do a bit of a deeper dive on AI. We round up the research papers we've analyzed on the platform. We talk about some different things that are happening out in the world of artificial intelligence, and it is always interesting because every week brings something new. Again, bottom of a very steep learning curve.
Yeah, those, how can people, because there's going to be people out there, and I know there's people in our organization. There was a joke to have somebody on that's an anti-AI person, and see you guys go at it, and maybe we'll do that another time. But there's going to be people in organizations that are resistant, and there's also going to be
Yeah.
people that are going to say, let's wait for this to shake out. That's going to
Hmm.
be another big topic discussion. I'm going to wait a little bit for it to shake out, which may be okay if you're
Hmm.
talking about, like right now we're using Copilot. I'm using Copilot to transcribe. Chad's
Hmm.
using Otter AI to transcribe.
Right.
So it is in our lives. It has started changing things for sure.
Hmm.
There's some cool stuff. I always look at Chat GPT. I do funny stuff. Chad, you might not know this or whatever, but I'll take pictures. Like I took a picture of the dog had like this burst, this cyst like thing on it. It's kind of gross, but I took a
Mm.
picture and it damn analyzed it, and it was dead on what it
Mm.
was when Marissa took the dog to the vet. I've taken pictures of moles. What does this look like? And
Hmm.
AI is like, this is what you look for. If they safeguard themselves, you might want to see a doctor. You've
Right.
done things where we've been in Vistage sessions with you as a coach where we built stuff and you've thrown it into AI just to say which model is better given this criteria. So
Right.
that was kind of cool. Anyway, for those that are on the side, what do you say to people that are on the sideline? Like I'm sitting there and I'm like, should I wait? Should I do this?
Yeah.
What do you want to say?
Well, I think what I would say here, Henry, is that this is, and I'm going to go hard left here. This is fundamental to the human condition, right? Whenever new technologies come out, you have folks that inherently push back because I don't believe that humans are wired for change. I think that change is hard, and I think that change and disruptive change that goes against our innate biology in many ways. I think it's a very rare human being that looks at something and says, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait to change. This is going to be fantastic," right? And
Yep.
so the people that push back against this, I get it, right? It's why we've got the term Luddite. The followers of Ludds smashed the looms and the automated weaving mills in Great Britain at the end of the 19th century because it was a threat to the occupation of the weavers and the guilds. Then we had people push back, and when the telephone came out, and they said, this is I've seen this in writing. This is a direct quote. This is a tool of the devil, right? The telephone. So anytime we have a new technology that comes along, there are people that are going to stand up and they're going to say, this is not for me. This is a pushback. And I think what's particularly scary and frightening to a lot of folks about this is the first time we have ever had a technology come along that didn't just replicate or replace raw horsepower or raw ability to do things with our hands or with tools. It is dramatically changing the way that we do cognitive work. And
Yep.
that is a fundamental difference from where we've been in the past. And what makes this very interesting is that it's replacing or supplementing cognitive work. So that's a threat. It is a massive change to the way things have been in the past. And it is also a general purpose technology, which means that if you haven't been in one of my workshops or heard that term before, a general purpose technology is a technology that can be applied in a lot of different ways. And electricity is a general purpose technology, the steam engine, computers. AI is a general purpose technology. And what that means is we haven't really figured out how to use it yet. And that's something else I think that's really important is people are looking at this and they're pushing back or they're nitpicking where things don't work well. Well, what works well? That's the question you should be asking. Instead of what doesn't work well, what does work well, and how can I make it work better? And there's a lot of ways to navigate that question. But if you are simply saying, I'm anti AI and this is not going to work, and I've seen all the Terminator movies and this doesn't end well, well, you may have 20% of a point there. But the other part of this is that technology, in all its various forms, has constantly evolved the human condition and pushed us forward as a species. And that's what this is going to do as well. Only it's going to happen in a very compressed time frame because all of the infrastructure, with the exception of some of these massive data centers necessary to scale the tech, are already in place. And so the timeline for this is going to really, really frighten people. And we have just seen the tip of the iceberg of this over the last 18 months. It's going to become more acute. And I wish I had a better message for folks, but the bottom line here is that just like I mentioned earlier in this conversation, the intersection of humanity and technology, this is also an intersection between who we are in the West as a culture and as a form of government, and the intersection between that and technology. And here's what I mean. We don't do central planning well. For better or worse, we don't do central planning well.
And we never really have.
No, we never really have, right? We've never had the glorious 5-year plans or things like that they have in some of the Eastern countries, for better or worse, right? Whatever your opinion is for our listeners in Asia, and all two of them, as Henry mentioned. And I think that understanding that is really important to this, because without any type of central planning or any type of central regulation, we are just going to allow this technology to continue to develop because we're in a free market capitalistic society. And that means you get the good with the bad. And that means that there's going to be a lot of change that happens very quickly and a lot of scared people. And you're going to see some of this manifest politically. 2.5 years ago, I spoke at a conference, and I was relatively certain at that point in time that AI would develop at such a pace that it became a factor in the most recent presidential election. Well, I was wrong. It was not a significant factor. Although immediately after the election, here we are, right? We saw, and we're recording this at the beginning of 2025, we saw the announcement of Project Stargate, and a number of other things are developing very quickly. So my timeline was a little off, but I will stand by that statement. This will become a political issue in the very near future.
It has to. I mean, people always have to have an issue or something to talk about.
Yeah.
I wanted to circle back. Talk about your hippie years, Chad, when you were trying to burn down the 5G towers. Do you have more information on that?
Oh, when I was out spiking, putting spikes in old growth trees and burning down the 5G towers, you mean? Yes.
Yeah. About that movement. It didn't go too well.
No, it didn't.
Still 5G, so
I'm afraid my tinfoil hat was not thick enough, Henry.
The aliens from Signs.
What I needed to do was come to Morehouse and get it measured and thoroughly vetted so that it would work.
That's what you needed. Yes.
That's right.
For the 5G towers. And
that's a new initiative I understand you wanted to announce today, correct? The
measurement
of tinfoil hats?
I wanted to talk to you specifically about, I'm having problems loading some stuff on AI, with AI.
Sure.
Do you know how I can load ChatGPT on my Commodore 64?
Yes, but it's going to involve some wetware as well. So we're going to need to get that Neuralink direct brain interface for you.
The Neuralink. So
Yes.
back to realistically.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much stuff. If you have the data, and I played with it, like process control stuff, you can put it in. You do not have to know that much about statistics. You can be kind of a little, what do I want to say? No, just a little bit. And in fact, I put data into, I load a bunch of CalCerts into AI and say, perform a statistical analysis. Of course, I didn't like what I got. So then I say, well, give me confidence bound. And I started with all these different things. So it's getting to the point that I do that same thing today that I did months ago. Give me a thorough statistical analysis, and it's better. It's much
Hmm.
better if it sees the data because it's learning from the
Yes.
repetition. So if you think about this, and I read and you comment on this, AI is so evolved and so advanced now that they cannot feed it information fast enough. I think that the numbers were staggering. You'd have to hire how many people, and
Yeah.
they'd have to type like 5,000 words a day into this thing. So what you were saying about evolving, I don't know. I don't think we're going to see Skynet or whatever. Someone's going to use it for bad. We know that's
Sure.
going to happen
Yep.
eventually. I mean, the probabilities, you start talking about that. Anybody in the world knows. Anybody that's in metrology listening knows probabilities. If there's a 0.001% chance, it's with 7 billion people and all this other stuff, it's going to happen uh,
Hmm.
eventually.
Hmm.
So the hope is that we have better technology than everyone else to thwart it or stop it. And this
Right.
is where you get into like some political debates, I assume, on we want to be better, like a race to the moon, so to say,
Right.
right? We want to be there first. We want to be the leaders. It
Yeah.
seems right now we are the leaders. And it also seems there's so much stuff in the pipeline. And
Yeah.
there's stuff that you and I can be excited for and we can be dreadful for. Like me,
Hmm.
I'm dreadful for when I call someplace and I want to
Mm.
speak to somebody and it's now going to be an AI assistant, a rather good AI assistant,
Hmm.
much better than some of the people that you might call up that are employed to try to help you, though it's
Right.
still not a person.
Right. And I think, all right, so a couple things here. Number one, I want to address that point, but I also want to talk about the data issue that you surfaced a minute ago.
Yep.
And one of the things that is going to allow the companies under their current model, and when I say the companies, I'm talking about the frontier model companies. I'm talking about OpenAI. I'm talking about
Yep.
Anthropic. I'm talking about Google. I'm even talking about Meta and perhaps Grok, although I have mixed emotions on that one for a variety of reasons. They are
Rolling
going to
Stones
be
songs.
able.
We're dropping some Rolling Stones songs now here.
Yeah,
Good
that's
job,
right.
Chad.
Uh, uh, they are going to be creating synthetic data because that's the only way to get the amount of information necessary to train a lot of these tools and to continue to advance them. I think the other point that you were driving at there a minute ago, and remind me where did you land on that? Was there a specific question? I wrote down.
Oh,
I wanted.
yeah. So it was about the just general point of
Oh,
view
oh,
about
yeah,
people and the AI
yes,
attendants, and
that's right.
people are going to get upset when they're talking to a computer,
Yeah,
and they
and
realize they're talking to a computer.
and this is where my hyper rational brain kicks in, and I'm like, okay, well, what is the result that you want? That's a question I'm famous for asking in coaching sessions. What is the result that you want? Is the result here that you want to talk to a person, or is the result that you need information, you need to conduct a transaction, right? What is the result? And
Yeah.
we are very conditioned to talking to people to get the result that we want, regardless of whether it's a transaction or an information exchange or whatever, whatever. And I don't know that that's necessary. I personally love the medical record movement over the last couple of years and the centralization of these portals. Right, Epic is a perfect example of this. I can go on, I can link all the different healthcare systems that I've ever had an interaction with. I can get my lab results. I can do this. I can do that. I can submit a request for a refill from my doctor. I don't
Yep.
need to talk to a person, nor do I want to. I don't want to spend 5 minutes on hold or trying to get through to somebody to get that transaction accomplished. I want to be able to hit a couple buttons and be done in 45 seconds because I'm moving on, right? I got
Yeah.
other stuff to do.
And if it's
And
all there, you can plot your blood work to say if something comes back
precisely,
high. You can
right.
say, "Oh, have I had this before?" Because that freaks me out. We're both at the age now that you're like, "Oh, my last one, my Billy Rubin's high. Oh
Right.
crap, what's that mean? Am I dying?"
Right.
Yes, we're all dying. No, but and then you go, okay, so the last three times it was like point 0.1 less. What does that mean? Oh, guess
Yeah.
what? I'm going to Chat GPT. Oh, we don't really care unless it's five. The standard says, if it's over one, then it's high, but in general, we don't really worry about that number until it gets to five. And I'm like, oh, I got a long time to go till I get to five. I still was
Right.
like, but you can tell, like for me, I can just tell it runs high, like looking at 10 samples of data. Only
Hmm.
one time was it in the green and it was still high green.
Right.
So that type of stuff is cool. Medical records, I'm
Yeah.
going into it, but medical records, right? If you anybody out there gets a report, they scare the crap out of you.
Yep.
Like some of the language, it's unremarkable. Unremarkable is a good word in medical,
Right.
but if I say Chad, you're unremarkable, you're going to be insulted.
Well,
So,
well,
right? So yeah, it's just some of the words that they have, the interior, blah blah blah. So you can throw that. I've thrown
yeah.
like a lot of my test results into Chat GPT and some of the other ones, and it will translate it to like a eighth grade level for me to
Right.
understand. Oh yeah, like anybody, your spleen's bigger. Well, yeah, your spleen enlarges as you grow older. Well, hell, I didn't know that. I know there's people
Mm-hmm.
out there that do know that, but I didn't know that. Like that's so. What does that mean? All the other stuff in there, though. I think when you were saying, I think a lot of companies, not all, want to pay less and they want 24/7 support because guess
Mm-hmm.
what? The customers are expecting a lot of them. Like we have calls that I get mad at, and I shouldn't get mad at, but they come in at like 6:08 on a Friday
Mm-hmm.
p.m. And I
Right.
respect people for working their full week and catching it up on Friday, though at the same time you start saying like, when does it end? When does
Right.
work ever end? And so the AI could help companies maybe, and people get
Yeah.
faster answers, though there still has to be that out that they can say, I know I really need to talk to somebody because I'm just
Yeah.
going down this rabbit hole of AI is not going to help me. Or
Right.
is it going to book? They have that ad on TV. Is it with Matthew McConaughey, right? Is he going to sit in the rain or whatever it is? Like,
Mm-hmm.
because it said it was booked with this. So
Well, and look, you're raising a really important point here. I think that we are rapidly transitioning to a 24/7 on society if we're not already
yes,
there.
yes.
And AI can help us navigate the complexity of information, to your point, and that you raised regarding the ambiguity of some of these scientific terms. I think it can help navigate the amount of data. And it can also, and this is one of my favorite phrases, I can't remember who said this, but work should work for me. So
Mhm.
let's unpack what that means a little bit in the context of this conversation. In your example, you talked about people calling at 6:08 p.m. on a Friday. That is because they are trying to make work work for them. They are working around their own schedules and they're fitting work in when it suits them best. Now,
Mhm.
in our drive toward a 24/7 culture, I think that that is absolutely admirable. However, the person has to recognize that they're not always going to get a human being after 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock on a Friday. What they might get is an AI. And so I think we need to start to think about, what can I accomplish in the quote off hours, the non-normal business hours that I need to accomplish? How can I accomplish them, and what are my expectations? I think that's a really
Yep.
key piece. What are the expectations that you've got for what you can accomplish and when you can accomplish it? And AI can help with some of that. It can help with an awful lot of it, but it can't help with everything. Not yet.
And it will get to a point. And then we get to the another discussion segue, the work-life balance,
Yeah.
because some people are they're
Right.
just workaholics. And when
Right.
they're your customer base and you're a workaholic, and then Chad's dealt with me forever, I want to pull back, right? These
Right.
discussions, like, all right, so how many years, like you start life reflecting. I've done this for 26 years. How many
Yeah.
years can you work 80 hours a week? How
Right.
many years can you work 60 hours a week?
Right.
Burnout happens. How many years? I think during COVID and stuff, Chad, we were meeting and stuff. I think I went 2 years without a day off.
That sounds about
Something
right.
something ridiculous, like
Yeah.
completely working
Right.
Saturdays, Sundays,
Yep.
like no day off. I'm not
Right.
talking about just the work week. I'm talking about probably a stint of maybe 400 days without a day off, then maybe
Mm-hmm.
a day off, and then maybe another 300 with a day off, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's normal for some people. But then
Yeah.
you get older and you start saying, like, hey, life is passing me by. Or I
Mm-hmm.
start getting, or like with me, you start getting health issues or something else, and you start saying, wow, this is not right. And not
Right.
to mention that not only is it not right, this is where diving out of AI a little bit. This is where you've been a coach to me on a lot of this, and like saying like, hey, if you're not empowering your people, back to culture. It all comes back to culture. If you're not developing that culture, it's always going to fall on you. Like when we met, I was doing everything, right?
Yep.
Payroll, all this stuff, and now I'm still in a bit of marketing and some fun stuff. But I have pulled back, and I don't have 80-hour weeks anymore. So that's a lot of Chad's coaching has helped with that. Now and then I have some maybe 55-hour weeks, but
Hmm.
it's more rare. And
Right.
I'm trying to segue into a more part-time basis,
Right. I,
and empower our people and culture. But
right.
yeah, go ahead, Chad.
Well, this is near and dear to my heart, and a lot of people are going to say, I'll use an old term here, you're Pollyanna, or this is pie in the sky. But I desperately want every human being on this planet to be able to engage in work on their terms and to do work that they truly enjoy and that energizes them versus enervates them. And when I say energize versus enervate, I think that you should be able, the majority of the work that you do should be able to give you energy as opposed to drain your energy and suck your soul, right?
Not all of
Right.
it, because we
Not
all
all
have
of
to
it.
do some.
That's
Like
right.
I've still cleaned the toilet. I'm the
Right.
president of the company, and I've still cleaned. Last year, I had still cleaned the toilets. I will probably still clean the toilets this year if the bathroom's a mess and I go in there, because it will bother me,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah.
does it drain your energy? Yes. Should I be doing that? Probably not. But whatever. Who gives a
And
shit?
and that's the difference though between an employee status and an ownership status. And I think as an owner and a leader of a company, you would love for everybody to have a sense of ownership in the organization and ownership
Absolutely.
and autonomy and empowerment for what they do. And I do believe that we are going to get to a point as a culture because of demographics and declining birth rates and the inherent nature of capitalism where everyone starts to view themselves. I don't know whether this is going to take 10 years or 100 years, but eventually everyone will view themselves as a free agent in business for themselves and herself and their self, and they will go and they will be able to do work that energizes them for the most part versus enervates them. And there may be companies with one person and 20 AIs, right? There may be companies still around in 100 years where you've got thousands of folks that work there. But at the end of the day, we need to do a better job as employers and leaders in society of making sure we've got the right people in the right seats, not just from a skill fit and a culture fit, but also from an energization fit. Does the work that they're doing energize them? Do they want to be there? Are they excited to learn more? Because that's the one thing that's super clear. We are never going to hit the end of science and knowledge and the frontiers. There's been points in human history where we say, oh, we've learned everything there is to learn and there's nothing else to learn. Well, what a bunch of crap. We are constantly going to need to know and understand more and learn more in order to be effective and for us to be energized. And that's exciting to me.
That's that's hard. It's
Yeah.
not easy because you want to
No.
surround yourself with that type of people. And people
Right.
have bad days,
Yeah.
right? And things happen. And then it's as a leader, it's when do you abandon the person? This is one that you and I have talked
Yeah.
about. Many of your clients talk about this. When do
Yes.
you abandon that person? You care deeply for them.
Right.
They have been an asset to the company.
Hmm.
All of a sudden now they can't get it together. Do you do it in 4 weeks? Do you do it in
Right.
6 weeks? Do you wait 6 months? And sometimes
I'm going to
people just
interrupt you
fall
here
off.
for a
Yeah,
second,
go
Henry.
ahead.
I think it comes back to Marcus Buckingham's idea about love in the workplace, right?
Hmm.
And it's that old saying, and people are going to laugh at me, if you love someone, set them free. Do you love that employee enough? And do you want them to live their best life, as the kids say, enough to help them be successful somewhere else? Can you set them free?
Yes. And the other part of it is if you know it's not a good fit, you're actually stealing from them time
Right.
that they could be happier
That's
elsewhere.
exactly right. And
The
that's
issue,
selfish, quite frankly.
yes, it's very selfish. Though the issue you have is you're on the fence because they were someone that
Yeah.
was great,
Yeah.
right? They were there and
Yeah.
now they're disengaged. So it's have you done everything leadership wise that
Mhm.
you can do? And that's where we get into the trap
Yeah.
that we always think we can help people and
Yep.
correct people
Yep.
and reform people, and sometimes they've just lost it. And the
Hmm.
other part of this is when the end does happen, and we've had numerous endings. It's never fun. Though the
Hmm.
other side of it, we've had people that have been very pissed off at us, like
Mm.
just
Hmm.
ticked, right? And then a year later, they come back and they're friends. I cannot
Yep.
remember. I cannot. Yeah, I can remember greatly. I said that wrong, but one of the people that I had to terminate just wasn't, I had to terminate him over the phone, and the rest of the our team members were upset with me over this. I can't believe you did this over the phone. I said, this guy this is X number of times that he's late. We're depending on him here, this
Hmm.
and that. This cannot wait, right? And
Yeah.
I had a long conversation with him over it. I said, look, we've had the numerous discussions and whatnot. So anyway, he's pissed off. He goes this, and then I think it's like 4 years later, I get a Facebook friend request. So I friend him, and he goes, "Hey, by the way, I wanted to thank you." I said, "For what?" He said, "Because I went and got my engineering degree. What I learned there was great, and I felt so fantastic, Chad, on this one. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
a win because it was really a painful struggle at the time because you had
Hmm.
somebody that they come in or they didn't really, you could just sense that they
Yeah.
didn't want to be there some days and all this other stuff, and then
Hmm.
they didn't show up here and there. So it's a tough one, and we've had other people in our that we remain friends with that are no
Right.
longer team members. And I think it's how you end up treating people. But some people self
Yes.
destruct themselves, and you're not going to win all the time with everyone, even
Right.
though I think a lot of us want to, and it
Hmm.
eats at us. I mean, I
Yes.
know it still eats at me, it still eats at our VP, it still eats at no one wants to, make that decision that,
Yeah.
we're going to send somebody off somewhere else. And
Yeah.
it's rough.
It really is. And one of the things that I really stress with organizations is the need for well-defined, well-understood, codified core values. And I think
Mhm.
that holds true for individuals as well as organizations. And
Yeah.
it's especially true for leaders. You need to make sure that you know what you stand for, because if you try to do the right thing, and that's an overused phrase, quote, do the right thing, right? But if you are trying to do the right thing for this person, the right thing for your company, the right thing for all the employees in your organization, then you can go to sleep at night and you can raise your head high. And 4 years later, you'll get that Facebook friend request knowing that you did the right thing because you tried.
Hopefully. I mean,
Yes.
and then you also, the other side of this is if you have one bad apple, it's a, they say it spoils the bunch.
Right.
Though everybody else in the organization is looking at this situation and how you're
Yes.
handling it. It is
Absolutely.
not on deaf ears or
No.
blind eyes. They
Everybody is
are
watching
looking
all the time.
all the time.
Yes.
And John Berger, I think, has a book. Yeah, he does have a book. It's called Ways of Seeing, but
Mm.
really interesting on the perception on how people see things.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden, Chad, you could be looking at this and say they're waiting 3 weeks. That's ridiculous. This person is just a
Mm.
colossal mess. And then somebody comes up to you and say, "Hey, if that were you and you had performed really well for the last 2 years, uh, and they were extending olive branches to correct it, how would you feel? Would you
Hmm.
be, maybe that changes your mindset. Like, oh yeah, what if I had my girlfriend leave or my house burned down or my dog
Hmm.
die or whatever it may, dad having cancer or wife
Hmm.
had, all these tragedies that sometimes we don't know about. So it's really, I would urge people just to seek to understand first, always. And that's
Absolutely.
really, you have to have the counsel with the people and see what they're going through and if you can work with them.
Well, and what you're talking about here, Henry, is even bigger than where we've been focused in our conversation on. People want to
Yep.
always say communication's difficult. Well, that's one piece of it here.
They want to
So
blame communication for
right.
everything. It's
So when we're talking about this, there's input, there's synthesis, and there's analysis. Okay, and we're touching on theory of mind stuff here in terms of how we think. Yet when we talk about input, we started talking about what people are seeing. Right? What are they observing? We're also, when we talk about input, talking about what are they hearing. Right? Because we process things visually, we also process them auditorily. Then there's what's in writing, and that's a different type of processing. So it's visual, it's auditory, it's in writing. Then how are we synthesizing all this information that we've got? Then what was all the programming that we got in our childhood or the
Yep.
experiences that we had that we're bringing to the table? And finally, how are we using all of this input plus our programming and our experiences to analyze this?
And
And
our
that's why,
influencers like
oh
Kim
yeah,
Kardashian and Chad Harvey. Both of you get
that's
about
right.
the same followers, right? I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
just
I'm
wanted to check.
launching my own brand of I don't know, Spanx very soon. I don't even know. I
Really?
don't follow these people. What are
What do
they?
they do?
Uh,
What do your new Spangs do? Do they enlarge areas or think
they
or
buttress and they support.
oh nice.
They make you the man that you want to be, Henry.
Okay. What if I want to be a female? Let's
That's a secondary line. We're still working on that.
okay.
It'll be out in
And
27.
and speaking of which, should we not say thyself? Is that politically correct now if everybody uses the term thyself?
Thyself or
Yeah.
byself?
No, thy.
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 Well,
Thyself.
I'm going to go right back to Henry David Thoreau. He said, "Trust thyself. Every
There you
heart
go.
vibrates to that iron string."
There you go. Now you have it. Thyself is the appropriate word.
Thyself.
We're going to bring it back. People don't say
Approved
it
by the
enough.
man that lived at Walden. Yes.
Yeah, people don't say anything. So go on. Yeah, as we detour away, yeah, it is perception and influences. I was saying, and influencers, because
Yeah.
your work, the people that you have around you, that core group,
Yes.
if they start to say things and
Right.
they start to get excited, right? Either way, it works, right? Yeah,
Yes.
if they start to get excited about something,
Hmm.
it's you can pick up other people. We see it in football, we see it in sports, we see it with natural leadership. People
Yeah.
start believing. I mean, you have to do the work and everything else, but I think this where Drucker comes in. That culture eats strategy for breakfast because you can plan. You can have the best strategic minds on the planet, and I think Henry Cloud also talks about this. That you put a bunch of A players in on a boat and tell them to row, and they're all physically, peak athletes and everything
Hmm.
else. And you put them against a bunch of B players that will all work together. The B players are going to kick the A players' butt because they'll figure it out how to work together instead
That's
of,
right.
just
So
row as fast as I can to beat everybody.
Yeah, my favorite example of what you're talking about here, Henry, and I don't know that this happens much anymore. In the 90s and the early 2000s, there was a phenomenon called adventure races, right? There was the Eco Challenge, there was the Raid de Gallier, there was a whole bunch of other stuff. And you'd have these teams of 3, 4, 6 people that would compete in these long-term endurance races. And it was basically who can get from point A to point B on foot or using the canoes or whatever they got going on in the fastest period of time. And here's my point with all this. Universally, when you look back at all of these adventure races, the teams that failed were the military teams. They were the ones that came together that had the
Hmm.
strongest, burliest, most fit folks. And the people that would crunch them and destroy them were these, 120-pound soaking wet female trail runners and folks like that that understood how to work together as a team and that would collaborate. It wasn't the big alpha male, I've got this under control. I can carry a 120-pound rock. It was the folks that understand and understood how to collaborate. And I'm not trying to say the military doesn't, but when you throw a bunch of folks together that are not part of a unit, that don't understand how to work together as a team already, then that's a recipe for failure, quite frankly.
And there's a lot of good with the military, teams of six. There's a
Oh,
lot of
absolutely.
strategy with the
Yeah.
military. And they all often say, I've heard, and I'd like to know the stats on this, that you have the biggest, strongest Navy SEAL person,
Yeah.
and they're usually the ones that crack.
Yes.
This super Herculean Navy SEALs, men or women, that just look like they can destroy and crush you
Right.
were usually little
Yes.
people, little skinny people when they started the training, and then afterwards they bulked up and now,
Right.
right.
Because we're
So
talking
it's a
about
lot of mindset.
mental toughness then too, and we're
Yeah,
talking about
yeah, yeah.
agility. I was just reading some interviews yesterday with 2 tunnel rats from the Vietnam War. Very small guys. You wouldn't think, looking at them, especially now, that they were as lethal and as deadly as they were. Yet, I think it takes a really special type of person that's very strong mentally and very agile mentally to go into those types of circumstances and conditions and execute the mission.
It's
And
one of the worst things you could do, and the trauma
yeah,
from that is just
yeah,
the people dealing with that. You're going in a small tunnel,
right.
and there's the VC rigged them with
Yep,
explosives, and yeah, they
yep,
were losing people. Any day you wake up that you're sent into a tunnel, it could be your last day on Earth.
yep.
And and then you make it and other people don't make it.
Right.
Yeah, it's that is mentally, and some people came
Yeah.
out of it and they're just
Hmm.
ridiculous, and some people can't get out of it.
Yeah.
Though if we
That's
relate this
right.
back to business, it's the same. No, it is the same
Yeah.
thing with business, right? You go
Yes.
through some hardships, and some owners, leaders cannot get past some of the hardships,
That's
or
right.
they get too focused on destroying their competition
Yes.
instead of doing what's right. Well, what's my competition doing over here? I need to know. Oh, let's do some of that,
Yeah.
right? And maybe you don't want to be doing any of that. You should always
Right.
do a SWOT analysis and all that. You're not going to,
Hmm.
Chad, you're not going to pee on any of that stuff, but it's
No.
why let that drive you
There's
and
a
what
big
your
difference between,
organization
yeah,
wants to do?
there's a big difference between environmental scanning and situational awareness and competing directly against that. I think that what you're essentially saying is we're talking about that infinite game, right? Which Simon Sinek
Yeah,
talks
Simon
about.
Sinek. What's the
Yeah,
goal of business? To stay in
exactly.
business. It's
Right.
not to, double or quadruple or this. It's to stay in business the longest.
Right. And I think that the way that you do that is you compete against yourself.
Right.
Not in a and not in a crazy I'm going insane way, but in a way
Yeah.
that you get up every day and you say, how are we going to do this better? How are we going to make
Yep.
this better for our people, for our
Yep.
clients, for our customers? Do we understand who our stakeholders are? I think that's a critically overlooked piece, especially in middle market companies when they're plotting strategy, is
Yep.
stakeholder analysis and going out to the second and the third degree and the theoretical stakeholders and the future stakeholders as well as the current ones, because only by understanding this and asking, how are we going to make it better? Do we actually get better? It's not about competing against,
No.
whoever your closest size competitor is. It's about competing against yourself and continuing to level up.
And be better.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not every day. Let's not
No.
get into the thing that every day we're all coming with the
No.
rah rah. I mean, we've had speakers in Vistage and stuff. They try to get you to the rah rah, show up with
Right.
your best self. Look, everybody has a bad day. The
Right.
goal is that you have more good days than bad days. The real goal is that you have ex, like much larger, maybe 95% good days to
Right.
5% bad, or 99% to 1% bad.
Yep.
It, yeah, to show up to for your best self, if you get news like terrible news that something's happened to somebody
Yeah.
that you love, or it's very difficult. So I don't want to. We get a lot of coaches that are rah rah, go break a board, go do
Yeah.
this, go do that, and it's not. It's can you consistently be good or great
Right.
each and every day, and
Yes.
you're going to have an off day.
Right.
Everybody has one,
And
but
there's a place and a time for the rah rah. Sometimes we need
yeah,
an injection of energy, right? We need that mental equivalent of the 5 hour energy where you got to break that board or do that. And there are lots of trips. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. There are a lot of tips and tricks. That's what I'm trying to say that you can use to hack your mental state. But you
mhm,
can only do that for so long if you're not completely bought in, or if it is not the type of work, again going back to that energize versus enervate, that energizes you. And that I think is really key, because you're absolutely right. We all have bad days. There has to be a human element to the management and the leadership of the teams that we're with, and there has to be a level of understanding that sometimes people aren't going to be at their best because they've got other stuff going on, right? And we don't always know what folks are bringing through the door with them, virtually or physically, when they show up every day. We don't know. We don't know
nope.
what it took for them to get there, right? And
Without
sometimes,
bad, can we have great?
yeah,
Can we?
yeah,
Wouldn't it just
great
feel
question.
level? I
Yeah,
know you were talking about. We just don't know what's going to
no,
happen with people coming in. You don't know.
no,
No
no, we
idea
don't know.
unless you're monitoring them
Right.
completely. I mean, we've had team members this year. We're off to a bad start. Someone's mom had a stroke. Somebody's
Yeah,
this. It's just a bad. And
yeah,
it's how you live with it. I mean, we're
yeah.
going through a development with the building right now. Everything's
Hmm.
chaotic because thankfully it's done. We added on all the square footage, but now we have to bust the walls down and move into it because
Mm,
things have accumulated, piled up, and we're
sure.
breaking free. It's a nice position to be in. To the song "I Want to Break Free." That yeah, and that's where we are. We want to break that wall because that wall is
You got to hit
to
those
the
high
other
notes
side of
for
the
me.
lab. What's that?
You got to hit those high notes for me.
No, I cannot sing like Freddie Mercury, unlike Chadwick Ellington Harvey the Third. So, where'd you get your name, Chadwick Ellington Harvey the Third? Is that
Well, I
a
believe you
birth
just
name?
made it up on the spot.
I did not. I've called you that before. So we need to wrap up. So business, a lot of conversation from culture
Yeah.
to AI and stuff. So what should businesses be doing? Like a wrap up of this. And
Yeah.
we can't use AI right now because we're live, because that could just wrap it all up for us and give us to dos and notes and
Yeah.
everything else. So
I think a couple things, right? Invest in yourself and invest in your people. Make sure that you are being really clear about what your organization stands for so that you can build the culture that you want. And then on the AI side, and we really didn't get to talk too much about AI today, this is very prosaic advice. Understand what your processes are and understand what and where your data is. Because if you understand your processes and you have good data hygiene, you're going to be ahead of 90% of most organizations, including Fortune 100 ones, right? And that is going to equip you and prepare you to take advantage of some truly stunning technology breakthroughs that are on the immediate horizon here in 25 and later.
it's really about your data,
Yeah.
right? Good, clean, sortable data that you can feed into the AI algorithms.
Hmm.
And then you can strip that data of customer names and stuff. There's also be
Yep.
careful, giving just a little bit of a shout out. Be careful to what you're sharing,
Yep.
where you're sharing. There are programs that Chad knows that are private that do not share everything. We don't know how
Yep.
private they are. They say they are, Chad, but this
Right.
is me being that I think all data is shared and Alexa's always listening and
Oh, yeah.
uh, so after this, I'm gonna get ads for Spanx because you mentioned it in the podcast, and I have an Alexa over here. So if anybody sees me looking really fit, it's probably because the Spanx that Alexa's trying to sell me, the Amazon deal that I'm getting is just too phenomenal to pass
We're
up.
all looking forward to that, Henry.
Are we? Are we all?
Yes. Yes. For a variety of reasons.
I saw that. We were talking about air filters and it was doing and listening, and I was told there's a lot. There's a lot there. So AI is data. Work on culture. Work on people. Invest in people.
Yeah.
Invest in yourself because it's going to be flexible with something else we talked about. There's going to
Yep.
be radical change.
Yes.
If you want to learn more about AI, subscribe to Chad's newsletter, the weekly email. You can reach Chad on LinkedIn, Chad Harvey. Do not confuse him with the singer. So if you pull up a country singer by Chad Harvey, that is not him. He is, for as far as I know, Chad did not create an AI persona that sings songs in country. Chad, tell them where else, what else they can do, because you do talk a lot of AI, and if people want to learn more, to stay up to date, they really want to subscribe to your email. That's free.
Yeah, absolutely. You can subscribe to the daily email newsletter over at chadharvey.com, or if you bounce over to AIforthec-suite.com, you'll see the online learning platform and community that we put together. And right on that landing page as well, there are links to the podcast. We interview thought leaders, we interview folks that are building AI technologies and middle market companies that are deploying it. And we have new episodes that release every 2 weeks. We're starting to get some really interesting guest inquiries as well from publicity agents. We just had one the other day from Cisco Systems and some other real big name companies that are starting to get attracted to this. So I think 25 is going to be a very interesting year. We've already got about 6 episodes in the can here at the end of January. More to come, but AIforthec-suite.com or chadharvey.com, and happy to connect with you.
All right. I highly recommend you do, even if it's just for an email a day. If you get something that makes you better, we were talking about that continuous improvement, an idea that'll make you better, the team better, anyone else better. These little incremental wins are the way to play that infinite game. So thank you
Well
so
said.
much, Chad. As always, love speaking to you on all these topics and everything else.
Thank you, Henry. This was a lot of fun.